Marcus Johnson was just a regular 16-year-old kid navigating the halls of Westmore Academy, a prestigious private school where the kids wore designer clothes and scuffed sneakers were hard to find. And then there was Marcus, a scholarship student from Oakland, where he shared a cramped apartment with his mother, Vivian Johnson, an iconic soul music superstar. Yeah, that Vivian Johnson, the one whose voice could melt glaciers and whose smile could light up a room. But at Westmore, her shadow loomed large, and for Marcus, it felt more like a weight than a blessing. It was mid-April, and the student council was all abuzz over the upcoming talent show. Most students were frantically preparing their acts, but Marcus was just trying to avoid getting too much attention, succeeding mostly by blending into the background. That was until Blake, the self-appointed king of snide remarks, and his rowdy crew had other plans. They figured it would be hilarious to drag Marcus into the spotlight, literally. They forged his name to sign him up for the talent show, and before he could even plead his case, Principal Reynolds was insisting he perform. "Come on, Marcus, you have to showcase your talent," Reynolds declared with a smile that said he couldn't care less about Marcus's reluctance. There's something about being forced into a performance that makes the whole thing feel even more daunting, and Marcus could feel the flush creeping up his neck. It wasn't just the performance, it was everything that came with it, the unspoken judgment of a wealthy room full of peers, who had zero idea about how hard he'd worked to be there or what it was like to be reduced to a punchline. Inside, he was wrestling with all those expectations. Being the son of the famous Vivian Johnson meant people didn't see him, they saw a stereotype. He was just a kid with a rich mom, and they assumed he'd get by on her coattails. As he walked down the hall, he overheard snickers and hushed whispers. "Bet he'll just sing one of his mom's songs and ride that wave." Ugh, how frustrating. It was exhausting feeling like he was always under the microscope. But then Mrs. Rivera, the music teacher, she was a gem. She spotted his struggle one day and said, "Marcus, you have a unique voice. Why not sing one of Vivian's songs, but put your own spin on it?" That hit differently. It was a moment that sprung a tiny spark of rebellion in him. Yeah, maybe he would. So with Mrs. Rivera's encouragement, he began working on a rendition of one of his mother's classics, infusing it with his own style, trying to erase those bitter taunts that always echoed in his mind. But as talent show night approached, the nerves were relentless. What would it feel like to step out there in front of them, to be exposed vulnerable? It was daunting, and each rehearsed note felt heavy with doubt. The night of the show arrived, and the auditorium buzzed with an electric energy. Blake and his friends were in the front row, eyes gleaming with their usual mix of malice and amusement, just waiting to witness what they thought would be an aviation. Marcus stood backstage, the butterflies in his stomach, hosting an Olympic competition, and as he walked out into the spotlight, he could barely see the crowd through the scorching lights. But when he began to sing, something incredible happened. The shaky tremor in his voice transformed. It was like a switch flipped, and suddenly he was pouring everything he had into that song. People began to listen, really listen, instead of snicker. The atmosphere shifted. But of course, Blake wasn't going down without a fight. Midway through, he and his buddies fiddled with the soundboard, typical last-minute sabotage. The mic crackled and then muted, and for a heartbeat, panic surged through Marcus. But then a wild thought crossed his mind. What if he made this a part of the performance? He leaned into the chaos. He let the music loose, his body moving with raw energy like he was dancing with the very sound waves. The crowd felt it. They began to sway, mouths agape, no longer mocking, but rather entranced, caught in the moment with him. In that thrilling climax, their skepticism shattered with every note. The energy was palpable, and he could feel it swirling around him as he embraced the music. Every heart in that room thrummed to the beat of his determination. By the end of the performance, when he struck the final note, the auditorium erupted in applause. Standing ovation, he heard people shouting, "Wow, and he's amazing." It felt surreal, like waking up from a dream to find the impossible had happened. But the exhilaration was short-lived. Post-show, Blake was back to his old tricks on social media, trying to paint Marcus as a wannabe, living in his mother's shadow. "You think he's talented? He's just another copycat." But Marcus didn't crumble. Instead, something new flickered within him. Resilience. Eli, his quiet dorm mate, stepped up. "I got your back, man. Let's show them who you are." And with Mrs. Rivera's help, they gathered evidence of Blake's tampering and submitted a complaint. The confrontation reached its breaking point during a heated student council meeting. Just when Blake thought he had buried Marcus in his lies, as Richard Torres, Marcus's godfather and an acclaimed music producer, walked in evidence in hand. The look on Blake's face when the truth hit was priceless, a mix of envy and despair as he faced total public disgrace. It felt like a full-circle moment. Eventually, Principal Reynolds not only acknowledged Marcus' talent but also learned about the album he had recorded with Torres. No longer was Marcus depicted merely as Vivian Johnson's son. He emerged as an artist, a distinct voice, unrecognizable from his mother, pushing boundaries, breaking molds, and standing upright in a world that had tried to push him down. The school started implementing policies that promoted inclusivity. The voices of all students heard, respected, valued. And as for Marcus, he released his first album, pouring his experiences into every note, every lyric, not just a journey of a kid figuring things out, but a battle cry. This wasn't just a story of a boy overcoming bullying. It was about finding one's voice and how powerful that can be, how easily we allow others to define us, when in reality we hold the power to define ourselves. So friends, I'm throwing this question to you. Have you ever felt underestimated, like someone tried to put you in a box? How did you break free? Share your stories down in the comments, and let's keep this conversation going, because every voice matters and every story shared inspires another. Don't forget to subscribe for more uplifting stories of transformation and resilience. Catch you in the next video.